call to order Public Hospital District Number 4 Board of Commissioners Work Study Meeting. It is September 26, 2018, and 6 o'clock p.m. at Snoqualmie Valley Hospital. Shall we stand for the flag salute? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the clerk please take a roll call?
President Norris.
Here.
Vice President Herron.
Here.
Secretary Spikers.
He is excused.
Commissioner Pollard.
Here.
Commissioner Young.
Here.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second it.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the agenda as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it passes. I do not see any public here to make any comments, so I think we will move on. The topic of discussion this evening is a review over the draft rules of procedure for our bylaws. And I think it would probably be appropriate for me to turn it over to the committee, or you gonna do it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Our CEO, Tom Parker, is going to be leading this discussion.
I'm going to introduce. So we have two parts of introduction here. One is I'll be talking about, the committee asked me to read a memo that's in a packet that you have tonight. In the packet, you will see a memo dated September 26th to the Board of Commissioners from the Bylaws Committee. I'm going to walk us through that, and then following me doing that, Skip Hauser is going to talk about the schedule that the committee has worked on going forward from here. And I thought it would be helpful for the board to first hear about the work of the committee so that you really understand why the schedule is the way it is. So I'll launch right into this memo. Item number one, background. On January 11th of 2018, at that board meeting, the board president appointed board members Emma Herron and Joan Young to the Bylaws Ad Hoc Committee and asked CEO Parker and General Counsel to serve on the committee. First meeting, the Bylaws Ad Hoc Committee met for its initial meeting on February 8th, 2018, and discussed a work plan and approach for the review of the district's bylaws. Our purpose, the committee discussed its purpose under the bylaws, that being as provided for under Article 1, formation and purpose of the bylaws, wherein it states, these bylaws shall be reviewed by the commissioners and the district's executive leadership team at least every 2 years and revised as appropriate.
Section once every 2 years, at least once.
At least once. Did I not say that? Excuse me.
That's okay.
Section 4, approval by the board. It was further discussed that all revisions to the bylaws must be approved and ultimately adopted by the Board of Commissioners in a public meeting. Further, it was noted that the bylaws had last been amended and restated on December 8th, 2016. Thus, a 2-year window would conclude in December of 2018. Our emphasis and our priorities. The committee identified 3 key words which they suggested should guide their efforts in the review of the bylaws and their recommendation going forward. Thank you, Commissioner Herron, for these words. And they are: make the establishment of written bylaws, keep utilizing the bylaws to keep, by keeping them current and keeping them before the board, and follow, an ongoing commitment to follow provisions of the bylaws. This was a theme for our committee. Item 6, characteristics of not well-written and well-written bylaws. The committee also discussed the characteristics of an organization's bylaws that are not well-written and those that are well-written, and would be an appropriate set of bylaws that would further meet the intent of the 3 key words that guide their efforts in this review. The committee identified those characteristics of the bylaws that are not well written as follows: disorganized, incomplete, conflicting information in sections, utilizing words that are not defined, not clearly written, use of acronyms that are not defined, not user-friendly, written in technical jargon, redundancy in the sections and documents, and not easy to read or utilize. The committee also identified the characteristics of an appropriate set of bylaws as follows: clarity in being clearly understood, concise, comporting and complying with the revised code of Washington, or i.e. laws, organized in such a way that they are user-friendly, complete and not lacking information, grammatically correct, reading well and without typographical errors, written at an appropriate reading level, and anticipating future issues and anticipating potential future issues and being flexible or adaptable in order to address such. Section 7, Rules of Procedure. The committee also discussed considering a recommendation to the board that would provide for a separate document entitled the Rules of Procedure, or such similar title for the Board of Commissioners to conduct its meetings. The bylaws would remain and relate to the governance of the board. The committee also further discussed the value in creating a separate document that pertains to rules and procedures related to board meetings and separating the bylaws that would address governance. The committee reviewed a number of examples from cities, hospital districts, and additional information on such. It was agreed by the committee that a rules of procedure document be developed. This would be done by identifying those sections in the bylaws to be removed pertaining to the operation of board meetings, with those sections related to governance of the board remaining in the bylaws document. Now, bylaws and rules of procedure elements. The bylaws document would focus on the governance issues of the district and more along the lines of what the board must do as a governing body, whereas the rules of procedure would be more as to how this process is undertaken in the board meetings. Issue papers. And by the way, all of the suggested changes that came from board members and myself were thoroughly vetted by the committee. And when these ideas about changes came up, issue papers were done on them. Over the last 8 months, the committee also undertook research. Now, committee is a little loose here. I want to say thank you to Skip Hauser for doing an amazing amount of research that showed up as these issue papers, and he has a thick binder there full of issue papers that the committee were able to reference as we looked at each one of these changes. Okay, so over the last 8 months, the committee also undertook research and asked the General Counsel to do so as well pertaining to the review of RCW's, WACs, and RMSA opinions. RMSA opinions, consulting with other attorneys. I think, is that RMSA? That's Skip.
MRSA.
I think it's I think that's
Yeah,
that's a typo.
Typo there.
Yeah, that's a
So
typo.
no R?
It's
MR.
MRSA.
It stands for Municipal Research
Yeah, let's
Service.
Yeah.
Transpose
Yeah,
the
so
two
we got a
letters.
little, yeah, but it's MRSA. Opinions, consulting with
dyslexic.
other attorneys, cities, and hospital districts. Over this period of time, 19 research and issue papers were developed and reviewed by the committee on various topics, from term limits of commissioners to commissioner benefits to conflicts of interest and executive session provisions, including many others, I'll just say. Revisions to dates. Over the next 5 meetings of the committee, these 2 documents were repeatedly revised, with approximately 13 sections being revised in the Rules of Procedure document and approximately 20 sections in the bylaws document. And in conclusion, the committee looks forward to working with the full board to review these drafts and adopt a revised Rules of Procedure and bylaws document. And now I'll turn the time over to Skip to talk about the schedule going forward, what we're trying to do tonight and how that relates to the rest of the year.
Point of clarification, did you say, am I recognized?
Did you? Yes, you are recognized.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
You said MRSA? I think you mean MRSC.
Thank you.
Municipal Research and Service.
That's what I was trying, I kept.
What's MRSA? That's MRSA.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're thinking of MRSA,
Yeah, that's,
which is not good.
I actually wasn't thinking of MRSA, but it came out
MRSC.
anyway. Yeah, it's
MRSC, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Pollard.
This is the
Good catch.
Municipal Research.
That's what we're whispering about
Oh,
over
were
here.
you? Okay. Yeah, thanks for catching that.
So, Madam President and board members, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of calendaring and the process now going forward. Your CEO, Tom Parker, just talked to you about what looks on paper as a lot of busy work. But I can tell you that each and every meeting, your board members, your CEO came prepared in advance because I had sent out minutes and issue papers. They reviewed those, and then at each meeting, we would discuss those, and we would get out red line strikeouts and start going through documents. So each and every meeting, one meeting we had 7 issue papers and we made numerous changes. So we were really pleased that we got to the last meeting last month. We were down to 1 issue paper and only 1 additional red line. You're all wondering, well, when do we get the bylaws? Well, I'm going to tell you. So this is the trailer to the movie that's coming. Today is September 26th, and we are here today on a presentation and discussion. We are not here to adopt the rules of procedure. We are not here to debate the rules of procedure. We are here so that the ad hoc bylaws committee can get feedback, get reactions, and take your temperature on, is this going to work? And if it isn't, how might it work? And so we want your open, frank feedback, and we'll take it back. I'll take extensive notes, as I always do, and then share those with the ad hoc committee bylaws members. And after this meeting, our next meeting will be on October 5. Just, 6 days away or so.
Yeah.
The ad hoc bylaws committee meeting will meet to review your comments that you're giving us tonight and continue, hopefully, the last review of the proposed bylaws, red line strikeout. There will be a board meeting on October 11th, and at your board meeting, you will be being provided the bylaws, the proposed draft bylaws. Again, the draft, you'll be giving those to you. And then 13 days later, not quite 2 weeks, on October 24, there will be a workshop on the bylaws, just like we're doing tonight on the rules of procedure. And I'll provide all these to Valerie in a calendar, and we'll try and get those out to you in an email so you can make sure that these are on your calendar. And then on November 8th, if we've received and accepted all of the feedback on the rules of procedure and the bylaws, this could go to the board for consideration as to debate and adoption. If the bylaw committee believes, or if this body, the full board believes, additional time is needed, we have scheduled November 19th for another ad hoc bylaws committee meeting to make any other further final refinements. And then we could move the final presentation again for the board consideration of adoption of both documents for December 13th. Your current bylaws, and there is no proposed bylaw change to this, requires that in fact, under Article 9, the very last article, that the bylaws may be amended by resolution of the board, introduced at a regular meeting, and adopted at a subsequent regular meeting. So they'll be introduced, discussed, debated, and then set aside until the next meeting, where then they would be voted. So we do have time, and I think the schedule will work. Any questions about the schedule before I
Yeah,
turn?
could you repeat the dates?
Sure. So, going through the dates, today, September 26th, work study. The ad hoc bylaws committee meeting on October 5 to review the feedback we received tonight and refine and finalize bylaws. October 11 is your regularly scheduled October board meeting, and you will be provided a draft copy of the bylaws at that time. You'll just be given those. It's not for discussion or debate at that time.
Just like we gave out these.
Just like we gave these out 2 weeks ago. I will not be at that October 11 board meeting, but will not be discussing the bylaws or the rules of procedure. Attorney Jeffrey Myers will be attending. He's the attorney that helped us with the public records request, and he's very familiar with boards and teaches classes. So he'll be filling in for me on that night. And then on October 24, approximately 2 weeks later, we will have another workshop, and that will be on the bylaws, because you'll be given those 2 weeks prior to that. And then depending on the feedback given there and how close the board feels we are to a potential meeting as to adoptions, then we would do that on November 8th. If the board feels like there needs to be more work done on the bylaws, further refinement, our bylaws committee is prepared to meet on November 19th, 11 days later, to further incorporate any refinements and bring back to you on December 13th a more polished or refined version for adoption. Did that answer your question, President Norris?
Yes, they did, thank
All right.
you.
And again, I'll try and get those out into an email to Valerie, and then she can send it out to the full board again, outlining your calendars. So with that, then I can turn this back over to Tom and assist as needed. You have a document entitled Rules of Procedure. We noted in our minutes, we keep minutes of every one of our meetings, we always have the addendum because we meet before the full board. And at the last full board meeting, Commissioner Pollard, rightfully and aptly so, said that I misspoke and called these the Rules of Procedures. It is Rules of Procedure, not procedures. And so we've made sure that that's been corrected everywhere, and I'll try not to misspeak. Other than that, you have a cover sheet, you have a table of contents, and 4 substantive pages of what the committee is proposing. So I can hand that back off to Tom, and we can go through those, and I'm going to take extensive notes as to what your comments, concerns, issues, feelings might be on these proposals.
Great, thank you, Skip.
Point of order, our rules say that we follow Robert's Rules of Order in all of our business. However, we can suspend the Robert's Rules of Order tonight, for example. And I understand the way to do it is to make a motion or somehow come up with a statement. We want to suspend the rules in order to discuss the rules of procedure. And that way, we can have an informal conversation. And I believe that there was some desire on the part of the board, and Mr. Spikers isn't here, but I think he even sent a memo regarding this, of a little more informal procedure under certain circumstances. And this would be an ideal opportunity for an informal.
And I think, I'm sorry, may I address that?
Yes.
Thank you. I agree. And in our work study meetings, I think we've tried to follow that we're a little looser.
Yes, but I just wonder if it shouldn't be in the record that we are suspending otherwise we're obliged to follow the Robert's Rules, even in a work study session.
I
Yeah.
think that's true.
Our
Commissioner
conundrum, Commissioner Pollard, is that we in work study are not allowed to make decisions. But,
We're not making decisions,
Oh.
we're making a procedural
rule.
I think
Is
there's a
it-
difference.
is it,
I think that would probably be,
I think either
very
approach
workable.
would
Does it
be
call for-
appropriate and workable.
Okay.
Commissioner Pollard's motion would be in order, but it is very common for bodies to meet and not follow Robert's Rules of Order in a presentation work study. If this is viewed as a presentation without taking any action, you probably don't need to suspend your rules. But technically, and most appropriately, you could say, let's suspend the rules to make sure, as Mr. Pollard has suggested. So he has made a motion, Madam President, so you have a motion before the body. If somebody seconds it, it's to suspend the Robert's Rules so that we can have a very informal discussion
Yeah,
tonight.
suspend Robert's Rules for the purpose of discussing, I've been told that's the way to do it, is to say for a certain purpose. So it's not just suspending all the rules.
Right, for purposes of
It's
discussing.
For purpose of discussing the draft bylaws.
The only issue I personally have with it is that some of us end up talking long or taking more time, and we don't get enough work
Exactly.
done.
Yeah.
So as long as we stay on task and take turns, I don't have a problem. Nobody dominates the conversation.
All right, I
And we-
agree. And I think also.
You should probably ask for a second to the motion.
Oh, well, if there's
Yeah,
no.
that's my opinion. Is there a second for the motion? Commissioner Pollard made a motion. Do I hear a second? Okay, not
Would you
yet.
like to second it, Madam Chairman? I think that you indicated your support of it.
Yeah, I guess I'm conflicted.
Oh, well.
Because
I withdraw the motion.
No, I'm not sure you need to, Commissioner Pollard. I think this is a good time for some discussion.
Well, I've been told that's the way we should do it, by people who are experts in this field. And so we can do it or
I do
not
have
do
a
it.
question. If there is a motion and we are discussing this freely, then there's no debate
But
at
the
all.
motion failed
There's no
for lack
debatable.
of second.
It's not debatable.
It's not
Because
debatable
but if there's a
because there is
motion-
no second.
There's no second,
Okay.
so we
And
dropped
I
it.
mean, if there was, I
And
just
that's
want
it.
clarification.
Mr. Pollard, because it's not before the body, can withdraw his motion.
I withdraw the motion because of lack of a second, so that's fine if we want to do that sort of procedure?
Ask the chair.
I don't wanna interrupt,
Yes.
but I wanna say,
Yes,
it was
Commissioner.
made very clear by Mr. Parker and our attorney that this is an information gathering process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there will be no votes on it.
No votes on the
Would
bylaws
you, would
or
you
the
like to,
rules.
Joan, if you don't, I will second it. Would you like to check second?
We don't have to vote on it. We just know that this
We
is a
have-
discussion, isn't it?
Well-
Maybe I'm
It's
missing
still-
something.
So may I just
Yeah.
jump in for a second? There's, so two different points here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not voting on the rules of procedure at all. That's all
No.
discussion. But there's a procedural motion that Commissioner Pollard made about how we work tonight that has nothing to do with whether or not we can do that and we're not approving anything about the bylaws. We're just talking about how we're gonna work tonight. And that's what Commissioner Pollard was suggesting. that
And
we go more informal.
Madam, some more information, Madam President, and that is, unless we take that kind of action, then technically, we are not following our policy of Robert's Rules of Order pertains to all board meetings. So it may be a technical matter, but from what I understand, we need to do it, or we will follow Robert's Rules of Order precisely, one or the other.
I think for this evening, I will second, I don't normally do that, but I will second Commissioner Pollard's request that it be informal. But if, maybe I'll make an amendment, that we really limit how much time different people use so that we
Thank you.
don't have one person speaking a lot and we don't all get turns to speak. And I think that's the thing that we have to work on. We're not very good as a body with all of us sharing the time and listening to others.
Madam President, would you make a specific time so that?
Well, here's the
Commissioners.
dilemma here. Madam President, I think, first of all, Commissioner Pollard has withdrawn his motion, so he's gonna restate it, and it sounds like you're gonna second it. And then once you suspended Robert's rules, there is no time limit, so you're on your own good behavior, and I think supportive of each other, just managing your time. And I think you can do that as a body, because Robert's Rules of Order identifies 10 minutes, and I know that's a long period of time, but tonight, you're on your own good behavior and grace among each other to be supportive that you won't go on and on and on. So with that, I would suggest that either Commissioner Pollard or another member restate the motion, a second from the chair or someone else, and then you could
Discuss.
vote on, then you could discuss, correct?
Okay.
Debate, pass.
Commissioner Pollard, do you want to restate your motion?
Yeah, it's very simple. I suggest that for tonight, we suspend the rules in order to have an informal discussion about the draft rules of procedure.
I will do I hear a second? Hearing none, I will second it. Well, I guess we vote. Is there
No,
any
you-
discussion?
You can have discussion if you need any further discussion. I would just offer to you that it is a technically accurate and correct, precise way to do this. I'm of the opinion you don't necessarily do that. You don't do that in your other workshops. It's just a presentation, it's a discussion. But Commissioner Pollard is accurately and precisely correct if you want to be that finite about Robert's rules.
But can we reject it?
You can reject it. I'd encourage you not to so that you can move along tonight, but I don't get to vote.
But my question before we vote is that as long as no one monopolizes the conversation, and I think, Madam President, I would leave it up to you to get your gavel when they're talking too long. Thank you to remind us.
I hope we don't need it tonight.
Thank you.
I have a question for our council on that, and that is that if things don't go the way that the body hopes that it will, they could always bring back the Robert's rules midstream.
You could always then have a motion to further, at that time, because you've suspended the rules though,
So
you don't have Robert's rules, you've suspended them for the purpose of this discussion. So you can't bring them back for that purpose.
Can I go, make another motion, or do we vote first
No, we gotta
to give
vote.
the
No, we got a
Robert
motion.
rules?
No.
We're gonna vote on this.
Okay, we can vote first.
Yeah.
And we could amend it to say, until such point that it appears that someone's hogging the conversation, at which point the chair can reassert Robert's rules.
I already said
I mean,
that.
but you know, looking back, our most productive and pleasant meetings have been when we haven't raised issues of Robert's rules. We've even had a member of the staff come in and say, this is the best meeting I've ever seen you guys have. And that was a meeting when there was no attorney, frankly, and no particular criticism of you, but there was no attorney, no parliamentarian, and we all just showed respect to each other and moderated our comments so that nobody took too much time. And those kinds of meetings, we've had several like that, and they were very successful. So this is kind of a technical thing that I was advised we need to do, because otherwise we are violating our own rules. So it's just a technical matter. I think it all depends upon respect and cooperation.
I think it is worth the try. I personally think it's worth the try tonight to have a conversation, board members, open conversation. If it gets too difficult, then we can go back and somebody can make a motion that they would like to reinstate the Robert's rules. I think that can happen. So, is there any other further discussion?
Just, is that adequate? Is that appropriate?
Well, I think it's appropriate. Once you suspend the rules, you can't unsuspend them unless you have an amendment that says,
Which,
Well,
somebody says.
you have to amend the motion that says, unless someone requests, and they would be given the opportunity to, again, comply with the Robert's rules.
Here, I accept that amendment. That's.
Well, I can't make the amendment. The more-
No, it's not-
I mean, I accept that as an amendment. What you have stated, I accept as an amendment, if that would move things along. Because I think we all know what we're after, which is a pleasant meeting where we can have an interchange of ideas without so much rigidity.
So it would appear that President Norris has amended the motion, and Commissioner Pollard has seconded the motion. So you have an amended motion before you. The amendment is that you could unsuspend the Robert's rules that had been suspended should any
Get out
member
of
feel like
control.
it's being dominated by one member. So you would vote on the amendment now prior to the motion.
May I change the amendment, or do I have to accept it exactly the way it is?
You cannot amend an amendment.
You can't add to it or change it?
No.
Okay.
But could you want to explain what you have in mind, though? When you vote, we might be able to accept that.
No, we'll just go forward. I think
All
we
right.
need to, we're already at 6:30 and we haven't accomplished much, so.
Okay.
So are we gonna take a vote that we're gonna, don't we?
This is the vote on the amendment to the motion, which identifies that any member, if they feel that the discussion is being dominated by one member, they can ask that the rules of Roberts now be unsuspended and return to Robert's rules. So there would be time limits on discussion.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion and the amendment, say aye.
No, of the amendment.
The amendment,
Aye.
aye. Those that oppose?
No.
Okay, that's
The
the
ayes
amendment.
have it.
The ayes have the amendment, is that correct?
It would appear that the ayes have the amendment, and now the motion as amended is before you, that you suspend Robert's Rules of Order with that amendment allowing that you could unsuspend those and return to them.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, then it doesn't pass. Well, it's, yeah, it's.
Well, I don't know, did Commissioner Young vote?
She said
We
no.
both said
She said no. Okay, then the motion fails. So you
With
should
a
move.
tie, it fails.
If it ties, it fails. You
Got
must
it.
have a
Okay.
majority.
Okay, in that case, we must follow Robert's rules.
That's correct.
Go ahead.
There you go. Alrighty, public comment, topics of discussion, review draft rules for the procedure. Where are we?
So.
We're now looking,
So I was going to, at this point.
start the discussion.
Lead the group through the changes. And what I propose that we do here is take it page by page and request input as we go along. So we are on page 1 of 4 of the rules of procedure, and I would request input from any of the commissioners on anything found on page 1.
A point of clarification,
Yes, Commissioner Pollard?
and that is, I've read an interesting article about the difference between bylaws and standing rules. And it seems that we're getting the cart before the horse. That bylaws should be adopted first, and then standing rules, or rules of procedure.
Well, I think tonight what we have before us are the rules of procedure, so we're
And
going
nothing's
to,
being adopted tonight.
and there's no adoption, we're just going through them.
Let me just finish this statement here. Bylaws and standing rules are interrelated, however, their relationship is strictly hierarchical. Provisions in the bylaws always supersede any standing rule that may be adopted. So the problem is, if we reach consensus on
Can't reach
There's
consensus.
no
'cause you can't
consensus to be reached tonight.
well, we reach consensus by appearing to reach consensus.
Can't even
No,
appear to,
no,
you can't
it's-
nose
it's
count, you
only-
can't make
it's only
discussions
getting
because it
feedback,
would be
and
a
you're
violation of
already-
the open
You're already providing feedback.
You two, you're worse than the
Okay.
board, you're both talking at the same time. I'm gonna hit this gavel if you don't stop it.
Can I say something, having been at the meeting?
Commissioner Young, you have the floor.
Yes. We are just learning about this. We are not taking any action at all on the rule of procedure or the bylaws or anything tonight, as our attorney has explained to us. We're just learning what's in this process.
Thank you for clarification, Commissioner Young.
Madam Chairman, what I really would like is for General Counsel to inform us a little more than what we have already about the difference between bylaws and rules of procedure and the precedence of
May I,
what has precedence. Because we've never worked with rules of procedure before. Matter of fact, I was the one sometime back that suggested we have rules of procedure to get some of the stuff out of the bylaws that don't need to belong there.
Commissioner Young, or Commissioner Pollard, we've already said that this is what the agenda was. That wasn't brought up before the agenda. The agenda was approved as written. So I think we're gonna move forward.
I'm only asking for information, the difference between bylaws and rules of procedure, and turning to the general counsel.
The information should be,
Respond.
but the question should have been asked before we pass it during our general board meeting, before this was passed. This is a work session, work study, and we're not doing any kind of a amendment. This is an open discussion, not debate in this particular session.
I think Commissioner Pollard just wants some clarification.
Yeah, well,
What?
we have to be clarified.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said you wanted some clarification, is that
Just
it?
clarification, exactly.
Counsel, can counsel do that for us, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, rules of procedure are how you basically run your meetings. It was brought to the board, and it was suggested by others that we look into this. So we looked at the city of Snoqualmie, who has rules of procedure. We looked at the Chelan Community Hospital, who has rules of procedure. We looked at the Oakland City Council as a suggestion of Ann McFarland. So I contacted the parliamentarian that you've used in the past, and I asked her about rules of procedure, how they operate and work. And so we looked at the Oakland City Council and their resolutions and how they operate with rules of procedure. We looked at several other hospital districts, and we looked at some fire districts. So what we're trying to do is make a distinction between your governing document, which is your bylaws and how you govern, and how you run your meetings. So the distinction there being is some rules of procedure that would not be overly complicated and could be changed or modified as needed more frequently than your bylaws. Your bylaws would require 2 meetings. They would require that they be reviewed and typically go to an ad hoc bylaws committee. And as Commissioner Pollard said, and I think he may have suggested this in the past, maybe we do need rules of procedure just so we can operate and run the meetings. So that's the distinction. I think the other concern he had that he mentioned that I can just opine upon is that he identifies, well, you have to adopt one before the other. We intend to adopt both of these at the same meeting, at the same time. We're not going to adopt the rules of procedure tonight, and we're not going to adopt them preceding the bylaws. We'll adopt them together so that the bylaws and the rules of procedures are adopted at the same meeting.
Am I correct, though, that the rules of procedure are subordinate to the bylaws, is what I've been told?
They're separate, distinct, and different.
different.
And different, so they're not subordinate or
My point is, the rules
insubordinate.
of procedure cannot contradict the bylaws or any part of the bylaws.
Well, neither document can
Neither.
contradict.
Oh, yes. Rules of, the bylaws set the standard, and rules of procedure must comply with the bylaws. If that's not correct, tell me.
That is correct, but the bylaws must also comply with the rules of procedure. They have to be
They're different.
complementary.
Complementary perhaps, but
Yes.
totally different.
They are totally different.
Okay, all right.
Now, understanding that the RCWs, the Open Public Meeting Acts, and other documents supersede these. These are
Oh,
all
sure.
subservient to
And-
them.
And federal law supersedes, and state law supersedes, and we come down into our bylaws that's subordinate to state and federal law. And
Right.
then rules of procedure are an expansion or explanation of
Right.
something, but it will not be in conflict with the bylaws, because the bylaws are hierarchical and
That is
supersede.
correct. They should not be in conflict.
Okay.
So if you look at the first page, these rules constitute the official rules of procedure for doing business. They are adopted for the sole benefit of the
If
members
you want to speak, you have
to assist in the orderly conduct of the commission business.
Could you
So-
please repeat that?
So if you look on page 1 of 4,
Mhm.
and it's red line, the
Top paragraph.
top paragraph, the committee asked that I look into a preamble, because we just started out with the meetings of the Board of Commissioners.
Mhm.
So we looked around, we looked at other organizations that had a preamble, so why do you have these rules? And the preamble states it pretty clearly. They constitute the official rules. These rules are adopted for the sole benefit of the members to assist in the orderly conduct of commission business. So, Commissioner Paul, that's kind of the distinction, that's the purpose of these, and then the bylaws have a
Yeah.
separate purpose.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's, I think we need to keep that clearly in mind, because as I
Gotcha.
read through this, I see some things that should be in the bylaws and not in the standards.
Gotcha.
So that's.
Okay,
These rules
well-
of procedures
Thank
do
you.
not
Thank you,
grant
Madam
rights or
President,
privileges
for
to members of the
clarification.
public or third parties. This is important. The failure of the Board of Commissioners to adhere to these rules shall not result in any liability for the district, its officers, agent employees, nor shall the failure to adhere to these rules result in invalidation of any commission action. These rules and procedures may be reviewed by the Board of Commissioners and the district's executive leadership team at any time and modified by a majority vote of the commission. That's a distinction. So I think I've answered your question.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, all righty.
as I look over, we don't have a really long document to work through tonight, so we're gonna take this article by article instead of page by page. So we'll start here with Article 1. This is this preamble that Skip just talked about. Are there any, Madam President, we're on Article 1, and I am going to solicit any impressions, thoughts, feedback about Article 1, and Skip will capture those.
I'm doing that right. I like that. Solicit impressions, comments,
Thoughts?
thoughts?
Commissioner Pollard?
I have a comment, but I'd like to hear from the other commissioners.
I've asked
first.
for yours.
Well, I defer to comments from my fellow commissioners.
Okay, so
May
you're.
not get another
so you're-
chance.
so
I
you're-
will respond after, I mean, I've been speaking all evening, and I would prefer to not continue speaking until I hear views of my commissioner colleagues. Is there anything out of order there?
I'm just gonna say I agree with what's right here.
Then, okay, so you'd like to go last this round?
Pardon?
You'd like to go last on this round?
Yeah, I'll go last on this round, and we're addressing only item 1.1, paragraph 1, or the whole thing?
Article 1, rules of procedure, everything under Article 1.
Oh.
I think that's enough of a chunk
Yes.
to take on in one round. So Joan, do you have any thoughts about Article 1?
I think it's very well written.
You're on the committee, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
No comments from me?
Any,
And none for me.
President, any-
No.
okay, well, back to you, Commissioner.
I guess the only thing I wonder is it says that failure to adhere to these rules shall not result in any liability. Its officers nor shall failure to adhere to these rules result in validation of any commission action. I'm not too worried about liability, but if we fail to follow the rules of procedure, that would seem to run at risk any actions that were taken in compliance with the rules of procedure.
I don't believe so. I'll just give you an example.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We're just gathering feedback.
Gotcha.
We're not discussing. So Commissioner Pollard, do you have a suggestion for how this would read?
Well, I personally would like to see, it would be nice if we could see another set of rules of procedure that you've cited, you're getting into all these hospitals and other places. I'd like to see how they state that.
Regarding the liability issue?
Regarding whether or not violation or failure to follow the rules of procedure might violate some commission action.
Very good. Good feedback. Thank you. Skip, you got that?
Got it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, moving on now to Article 2. Because this is a long article, we're going to take this by subsection. So we have some additional language under Section 1 about the meetings. And I'm going to start now with Commissioner Herron if she has any thoughts about that section. And there are two major parts here, the second paragraph and then the fourth paragraph where there's some new language. Anything, Commissioner Herron?
No comments?
Okay. President?
No, I've looked at this and I have notes on other pages, but I
But
don't
not
have
on
anything
this
with this one.
Okay.
No.
Commissioner Pollard?
I just believe that item 1.1, paragraph 1 belongs in the bylaws.
Okay, very good. Oh, wait,
I'm talking
All right.
about paragraph 1,
I'm with you.
item 1.1, and now going to paragraph 2. I guess what I'm saying is I read these things over, and I see a lot of things that really belong in the bylaws, and that's why there's an advantage to doing what the authorities suggest, like this one I've got in front of me here.
Do you have
Says
another-
After adopting a set of
Do you have
bylaws.
another section, do you have another part of paragraph 2? You mentioned paragraph 2, there's something that should be in the bylaws. What is that?
Well, this business about the president shall have the discretion to determine whether or not there needs to be strict compliance during the meeting. It seems that the best way is, the bylaws say you will follow Robert's rules. And so if there's going to be a relaxation of the rules for a meeting, then we need to do what I tried to just do, which is to say that we need to suspend the rules. We don't need to have the board president able at any time to spring Robert's rules on us. We should make a decision at the beginning of the meeting to suspend the rules in order to do such and such.
Very good.
That's the way I understand the way it should work.
Okay, thank you for that, Commissioner Pollard. Okay, let's see. And Joan, Commissioner Young, do you have any thoughts about, or Commissioner Pollard, did you have anything else on section 1.1?
Paragraph 1 or the whole thing?
The whole section. We're
Oh,
taking
okay.
section,
I think we ought to
subsection
take
by
it
subsection.
Paragraph by paragraph. On the paragraph 2,
Mhm.
it says the president may enlist the assistance of parliamentarians trying Robert's rule or the district's general legal counsel to assist. I think we need to define what do we mean by assist. For example, during the last year, we had the parliamentarian run our budget meeting, and that's an unelected person. Ann McFadden actually ran our budget hearing. And then, when we had a very important issue with regards to regional health / ASTRIA, the general counsel ran the meeting, and he's also unelected. And it was a very rigid meeting. So I'm saying, I just think we have to identify what we mean to assist. I think, for example, the legal counsel should advise us on legal matters, and if he's functioning as a parliamentarian, he should advise us on parliamentarian matters. But the word assist is too vague. That almost means that the chair can invite him to do anything,
Okay, so
and that she can call then assistance.
Thank you. So we have a suggestion here that we better define the word assist. Anything else in that section, Commissioner Pollard?
Could we ask?
No, I'm sorry, Commissioner Pollard.
Well, I'm kind of put on the spot here because very frankly, I think we should discuss this as a group.
Now, I'm gonna,
Okay.
unless you have any other changes, Commissioner Paul. I'll move on
I
to
do.
Okay, what are they?
But you can't just punch my button and demand them. I will bring them up as I can, okay? So are you saying you've got this much time, you gotta respond right now, or let it go? Is that what you're saying?
You've had these for a number of weeks now, and I expect.
I'm
that
saying,
you would
I'm saying
have
that
the-
I think
the
that
changes
this
that you
whole
would wanna make.
document needs to be reviewed from the standpoint that much of it belongs in the bylaws. And we wouldn't be having this discussion if we had started with the bylaws, which would have been the appropriate way to go.
That feedback has already been registered, thank you for that. Do you have any other thoughts about section 1.1? Specific suggestions?
On page 2 of 4,
Mhm.
paragraph 2,
Are we there yet?
We're still in section 1.1, so yes.
yeah, it says is provided for herein, the board president may choose to exercise Robert's rules as parliamentary. Wait, if we're going to follow Robert's rules,
Are
the
we
board
done with
president.
page 1 before we move on? Are we done with page 1?
It's all part of the same thing.
Okay,
Emma,
sorry.
we're taking it section by section.
Okay.
Go ahead, go ahead.
It's not up to the whim of the board president to follow Robert's rules. It's stated in our bylaws that we follow Robert's rules in all meetings of the board, okay?
Got it.
So it's not fair to say that, as provided for here, and the board president may choose to exercise Robert's rule. No. If they're in the bylaws, they're obligatory unless we suspend the rules. It's that simple.
Got it. Skip's got
Okay,
that one.
and then if we're following Robert's rules says, and if you go to the little book that we got when we first came aboard as commissioners, it says, let's see here. You may speak in debate twice on any debatable motion on the same day. Each time you may speak for up to 10 minutes. These limits apply to any organization that has not adopted special rules setting other limits. So I think this is our opportunity to set limits, but at the same time, the standard rule under Robert's rules is you get 10 minutes to speak once recognized, and it is even suggested that small boards, you can have more time than that.
So your feedback on that is that Robert states other than the 4 minutes that's been suggested?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Anything else?
I want to talk to that.
It says the limitation on the amount of time each commissioner is afforded for motions does not apply to committee reports. I think one place that where there's a lot of rambling and a lot of time taking is with reports from committees.
Do you have a suggestion on a time limit for the committee reports?
I think that they should be no longer than what we decide to make available to commissioners in making statements once recognized.
So noted. Skip's got that. Okay, thank you. Any other suggestions?
Maybe we could just pick a number, because sometimes they go on for a half an hour, and I think that they could be tightened up. Committee
Okay.
reports could be tightened up.
Okay.
As far as the number, it's, immaterial, but it could be tightened up, okay?
Okay.
Let's see here. Now, we say here, minutes will contain a record of actions taken and may include a summary of comments made. Now, that is, once again,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Paul, where's that at? I'm just trying to.
this
The
is.
second paragraph.
1-1, page 2,
Uh-huh.
second paragraph from
Okay.
top.
Oh, okay.
Second paragraph.
Under the red line.
Got it.
Yeah, and it states that minutes will contain a record of actions taken. Now, that is the gold standard of Robert's rules. You record actions taken and not the discussion. And now we're saying that it may include a summary of comments.
Just a note for you, Commissioner Pollard, anything that's not redlined is something that already exists in our current bylaws.
Right, and that's why, now that we're reviewing them, I think we need to correct that.
Okay, I'm with you.
Because
I
the
just wanna
summary
make sure.
of comments doesn't comport with Robert's rules. It says that you record only actions and not discussions.
So your recommendation or your feedback here is that we strike that part?
We strike that, yes, because the problem with making a summary of comments is who's making the summary? You see? And that could be a very biased summary. So I'm not sure if there's a way to do an objective summary, like the person spoke on this topic, period. But getting into more than that could lead to biased commentary, and we want to avoid that.
Got it. I think we've, okay, got that point. Anything else?
On section 1.1, I
Yep.
think that's good for now.
Thank you.
With the concluding
Commissioner-
comment, and I repeat it, I know it's been repeated more than once, that I think we should have started with the bylaws, and
That's been,
that some of this is,
that's been
belongs
registered
in the
in
bylaws.
your.
You're done, Commissioner Pollard.
What?
Joan, the chair recognizes Joan.
I don't have anything to add one way or the other.
Okay. Emma, do you have
Do you have any comments?
on 1.1?
On 1.1, I have no comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
The red line, in the second paragraph, 4 minutes, I'd like that to say 3 minutes.
Okay.
I think all of us should be prepared enough that 3 minutes should be enough. Also, down below that, the word brief, a brief statement of reasons, therefore included in the minutes. How do we define brief?
Okay.
That's a vague word, so I'd like to see us define that or give it a limit.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. Anything else in there in 1.1? Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go on to 1.2. There is one change there. But we'll take any comments on that. And let's see, I think we start, I'm trying to get oriented again to where we started, but I think we'll start this time. Since we ended with you, we'll start with Joan.
This is about changing the meetings.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
anything about 1.2.
I just think that it would be fine to change the meetings to 6 o'clock so I wouldn't have to tax my brain so much.
Okay? Thank you, Joan.
Tax your brain so much?
Tax my brain,
Okay,
yes.
Emma, do you have any comments about 1.2?
I agree with 6 o'clock to be consistent with the rest of our meetings.
Okay. President, any comments about 1.2?
Yeah, I don't like six o'clock. I think 6:30 needs to happen. One, people don't get off work in time, and also, we're having a hard enough time meeting this 6:30 sometimes with our commissioners. So I would prefer, traffic is an issue for those of us that are using I-90.
Okay.
And so for me,
A preference for 6:30?
yeah, I do have a preference.
Okay. And then Commissioner Pollard?
The other jurisdictions in the valley, namely the city councils, all meet at 7 because they want to provide an opportunity for people to go home and have something to eat before they come to these meetings. And so I think meeting at 6 or even 6:30 has a chilling effect on whether people are going to come to our meetings. I think we first must decide, are these meetings for the staff and board, or are they for the people? If they're for the people, we really need to meet at 7 o'clock. And that would also avoid the hazards of traffic that goes on 6:30, and especially in bad weather. So I would say 7 o'clock should be the meeting times, the same as the city councils in the valley. And because we can see we're not getting the public to come to our meetings. If they don't come to our meetings, they don't feel involved, they don't come to our hospital for services.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, we're gonna move on to now section 1.
Sir, I
Oh,
have
I'm
another
sorry.
one, and that is the last sentence, if
Yes.
at any time any regular meeting falls on a holiday, such regular meeting shall be held on the next business day. That doesn't work sometimes with the calendar. It should be perhaps the next Well, at any rate, I just think that we may not want to have it the next day because of
The next business day.
the next business day.
Makes it work.
But even so, don't you think that we need to have a little more notice than that?
Well, Madam President, if I might.
Yes.
The statute requires you to have this language. You don't have to hold the meeting, but that's what your bylaws have to say, or your rules of procedure in this case. The statute says you're supposed to hold it the next business day. Now, what you're gonna do is you're gonna say, no, we're gonna hold it on this day, which is perfectly fine. You're scheduling it for a different time. But the statute says if it falls on a holiday, you're supposed to do it the next
That's
day.
RCW?
Yeah, it's listed there. It's RCW 423007.
What does it say then?
It says you must do it the next day.
Yeah, the statute is mentioned there.
It state, could you read the sentence?
Yeah, the statute is defined.
Yeah.
So it says, if it falls on a holiday, such regular meeting shall be held on the next business day, RCW 423007.
That's almost an exact
Thank you,
quote.
thank you.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, great.
And we can just go to that RCW and it will give you all the details, the specifics, correct?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, so started there with Joan. Okay, so, section 1.3, we're gonna start with Emma.
1.3 special meetings.
That's the section on special meetings. Do you have any thoughts on that section? There are no edits to it, but we
No.
should solicit thoughts nonetheless. Okay, thank you. President, anything on that special meetings section?
No, I didn't have any comments on
Okay,
that.
Commissioner Pollard.
Could just define special meetings. Now, for example, our work study sessions, special meetings.
Trying to recall if we noticed them. I mean,
Yes.
they're
Any meeting that's not a regular meeting is a special meeting.
special, thank you.
And our work
Okay.
sessions
Including
are a regular
workshops,
meeting.
Special meetings, whatever you, so anything that's not a regularly scheduled meeting that is
Where-
adopted in your,
Where we have a quorum, or we have three or more, right?
no, just where you have a regularly scheduled and you list those at the start of the year. Any meeting that is not one of your regularly board scheduled meeting is a special meeting.
Okay.
Does that include work study?
Yes, work
Yeah,
studies are
work study
special meetings.
committees and all that, yeah.
You call them work studies, call them workshops, that's fine, but they are
Yeah,
special
but they're all
meetings.
special meetings.
Thank you, Skip.
yes.
Correct,
These are listed though,
yes,
at the beginning of the year.
I understand.
They're all set out.
but they're still a special meeting because they're not a regular meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so even though they're scheduled, they are a special meeting, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Correct.
And so when we make our listing at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, we should identify regular meetings and special meetings, shouldn't we?
They're identified as work study.
They're called
but-
work study, but we could say work study and parenthetically say special.
Yeah.
As long as you're posting them and what you're doing,
Which we
and
do.
Valerie's already doing that, you
They're on the
don't,
all
website.
compliant.
you don't have to call them special.
What I like about it is that you do put the RCW, so if I have any question, I can just go back to that one.
Yeah.
And, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so at the end of the RCW is written.
Commissioner Pollard, any other thoughts on 1.3?
I just would like that we give notice earlier than this requires. Such notice must be delivered personally by mail or email, et cetera, 48 hours before the time of
Do you
such
have a
meeting.
suggested definition of your early, what's earlier for you?
I think as early as possible, which means that when when the board members or commissioners receive their agendas and documents 1 week in advance, why don't we give notice at that point also to the public? And that is posting and putting it on our website. I just don't see why. There are times when we are waiting until 24 hours, not even 48 hours, before we see those things posted.
And so your suggestion is notice a week in advance?
Notice that a week in advance
Or as soon
as
as
after the agendas and materials are provided to the commissioners as possible, something like that.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything else?
Now, it
Okay.
says that the board shall not take final disposition.
Yeah.
Now, aren't there times, though, when we hold special meetings where we need to take dispositions?
Special meetings
Disposition on
can't,
such
special
meetings.
meetings, oh wait, special meetings can be decision-making.
That's what I'm saying.
Correct.
They can be decision
They
meetings.
can be. Specific
Because here
to-
it says the
specific
board
to
shall
an
not take
agenda
final
item.
disposition on any other matter.
Correct.
But we could have an item on the agenda, even for this meeting, could we not?
If it were noticed as such, I believe we could.
That's correct.
If we put it in there, and maybe we should identify it as action or
Right.
business.
usually they are.
Somehow identify it as different from a work study usual agenda.
Correct. If you were gonna take action on an item at this special meeting, which is a workshop, you'd have to put it on the agenda, notify the public that, there may be action.
Action will be considered.
Yeah.
on
And
this.
no, and as I also understand it, no changes could be made to that agenda because it is a special meeting.
Correct. You can't add
Yes.
anything.
Can't.
Special meeting, you can't add any
You
agenda.
can't add anything in.
You could change what's on the existing agenda on a special meeting. Say you had 3 items, you decide to defer one or not have that heard, you would just say, we're not
But
gonna
you
do that.
can't add.
Can't add.
Thank you.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question, there's a comment.
Okay.
But when a special meeting, because there are some that will not be open to the public, is it necessary to post it, make a
Yes,
public?
so the
notice?
special meeting is
Yes.
open to the public, but then you recess and go into an executive session where the public would not be able to be involved. But you have to announce the special meeting, open the meeting to the public, and then immediately recess and go into executive session and excuse the public. Bring the public back in at the conclusion of the executive session and recess the meeting.
Yes.
So the public gets to be
Yeah.
there for 30 seconds.
No, what I'm referring to, special meetings such as committee meetings, for example.
Those aren't considered.
That's actually they
That
are.
session.
We have 2 committees that
Right now, you
are
have-
considered special meetings, and
Right.
we
Post them.
publicly post them
Yep.
as special meetings.
Okay.
Because
That's true.
Whether the
They-
public is invited or not.
the public is invited, and it is possible in those meetings where you could have 3 or more commissioners, so they must be posted and treated as a special meeting.
Okay.
And the committee is talking about
Yeah.
that under the bylaws, and we'll come back to
Yeah,
that later.
okay, just,
Thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Pollard, we're still with you on that section, section 1.3?
Well, is it proper when we give note, well, we're just talking about special meetings here
Yep,
now.
yep.
We can't add anything on the agenda of a special meeting.
Correct.
Than once posted.
Correct.
Does that contrast with a regular meeting where we can add items on the agenda at the meeting?
Correct.
Yep.
Regular meetings, you can add agenda items. On
Right.
special meetings, you cannot. Only what's on the agenda.
That's all I have for that.
Thank you very much. Joan, you're gonna wrap up you're gonna be the last one on 1.3. Anything?
No.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna move on to 1.4, and we're gonna start with President Norris.
What about Hannah?
Emma started the last one.
yeah.
Oh, I thought John did. Okay. Is that 1.4?
1.4.
I don't see any problem with this.
Don't you see the 6 PM? Didn't you say you wanted?
Oh,
This is board, this is.
The work
excuse me,
study.
This is work study.
work study.
Work study.
I would prefer it be at 6:30, along with our regular meeting.
Okay.
I think that again, at 6 o'clock, if we do want people to come, they're not gonna get here on time.
Yeah, Great, okay, we got that. And I'll just note that the change that was made by the committee was to reflect reality.
Yeah, there was a
What we're doing
typo,
now.
and you,
Yeah, there was
it had Thursday
typo.
in your
Yeah.
old
Yeah,
bylaws.
Thursday
So we
was
just changed
incorrect,
it.
so,
Yeah.
right.
And Wednesday's fine.
Wednesday's what we're doing right
Yeah.
now, so we
Yeah.
just wanted the rules of procedure to reflect current practice. Okay, we got that feedback. Commissioner Pollard?
I agree with changing the time once again. What is it gonna take to get people in the habit of coming to our board meetings as they used to? We used to get 10 to 18 or so people coming to the board meeting in the basement of the old hospital. And we carried over with some participation here for a while. But for whatever reason, we're getting nobody who is a resident of the district coming to our board meetings. I think part of the reasons it's being held here in this basement, but the time is a factor.
And what was your suggestion?
My
then?
suggestion is to hold all board meetings work session or regular at 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
To give people a chance to have dinner with their families and then come to our meetings.
Okay, do you have any other thoughts or feedback on this section?
On item 1.4,
Yes.
I think it's fine otherwise, just the
Great.
time.
Thank you. Joan, Commissioner
Well-
Young, on 1.4.
I'm probably on the other side of the band wagon, whatever. I would like to see our meetings as early as possible because the traffic, et cetera, going home in the dark late is not any better than all the traffic coming up here at whatever time.
Okay, do you have a suggested time that you would like?
6:30, whatever.
Okay, any other suggestions for that section, Commissioner Young?
No?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Herron, thoughts on section 1.4?
Wednesday and 6:30, I concur.
Very good. Any other thoughts on that before we move on?
No further comments.
Okay, great, thank you.
May I modify my comment or add something additional?
Of course, yeah.
And that is, I note that Evergreen Health holds their work sessions during the afternoon, like at 3 o'clock or 2 or 3, 1 or, you've been to.
Actually, I was, been to board meetings, I haven't been to work studies.
Okay, but at any rate, there could be something to be said for holding meetings in a work study session in the afternoon. And I think that people might even be more willing to come to that than a meeting that conflicts with their dinner hour with their family. So I think maybe we ought to be open to discussing the time of these work study sessions. But if it's going to be in the evening, I reiterate 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much for that additional comment on that section. Okay, we're gonna go to section 1.5, and Commissioner Pollard, you're the first commenter on section 1.5.
Well, I think that I was one of the folks that suggested that we have 2 public comment sections. I see that we're deleting one of them on this proposal. And the reason I suggested we have 2, and I think it came out of our strategic planning session, and that was that we had a lot of people coming to our meetings, and we wanted to make sure that they had plenty of opportunity to speak. But now we're getting one person who lives outside the district, can't vote, can't run for office, and is at no risk in case the hospital fails, and so on and so forth. We're getting nobody, no taxpayer and resident of the district coming to our meetings, and it's just very frustrating.
Okay, and your suggestion for this section would be?
I think we need to look at, for example, what the city of Snoqualmie does, which is to identify, if we're gonna have 2, the first one is public comment for items not on the agenda, I think is the way they put it. And the reason is somebody may wanna come in and make a comment and leave, and not have to stay through the procedures to the middle or the end to get public comment. So I'd like to see maybe what some of the other hospital districts are doing on public comment, and at what point do they allow public comment? I think the way the city of Snoqualmie does it is that the chair can call for public comment at any point when there's serious business going on and she wants to hear, or the board might want to hear the opinion of the public without having a rigid spot for it. Because the question is, do you have people comment before a proposal is introduced, or after, or middle, or I just think we need to give a little more attention to when we have the public comment and how often people are allowed to speak.
Okay.
And I take it that the committee decided to make it only one public comment.
And spend a lot of time on that. I'll just go on this. The committee spent a lot of time on this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, well,
Good
I
feedback.
guess I'm just not satisfied with how we've defined public comment.
Very good, okay.
And so.
Other thoughts on that section?
Okay. The good of the order / commissioner comment, this was originally in our previous bylaws as committee of the whole. And that's the city of Snoqualmie, as an example, has on their agenda every meeting, committee of the whole. And that's for various informal discussions and so forth. And they convene the committee of the whole. So it might be good to look at how they do it, or look at committee of the whole, because that's really what we're talking about here. Good of the order is kind of a cliche, commissioner comment. I'm not sure those are the best descriptors of other, but I think they are probably an improvement over other. I would prefer us to use the term we once used in our bylaws, and that's committee of the whole.
Thank you for that.
Take a look at that.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner Pollard?
I think it's very good to have next meeting dates and times. One of the things that the city of Snoqualmie does is, after a meeting is over, they send out to everybody on their mailing list summary of actions at the council meeting. Because the public sees our agenda, and unless they come, they don't know what really happened. And they just tuned out as to what actually happened at our board meeting. The city takes care of that by sending out to their mailing list a summary of actions of the board meeting. Now, I think that would keep our name before the public, and it help them feel involved and keep them informed of what actually happened at our board meeting. Something to consider, and that's not mentioned here.
Thank you.
Otherwise, as far as item A goes, I think that's good.
Okay. All right, anything else on that section, Commissioner?
Old business, new business. Well, I have made comments before that I do not think it's appropriate to have new business wrapped up with a committee report. I think that's just not done anywhere else but right here in this district, and I think it's inappropriate. I would like to see old business separated, as it is here, under old business, and new business separated as new business, and not just as an action as part of a committee report.
Got it.
That's very, very, very unorthodox and irregular. Otherwise, as far as B goes, and I still am facing the quandary of how maybe much of this or all of this belongs in the bylaws, or part of it, or somehow there should be some of this in the bylaws.
We did.
Okay, I keep repeating that. I just think that there's a
recorded.
confusion as to what belongs in the bylaws and what belongs in the rules of procedure. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Young.
Ron, 1-5.
1-5.
I think having public comment at the beginning of the meeting and not necessarily at the end leaves room for us, if we want to have conversation with a piece of the public on our own, we could do that after the meeting's over. And as far as, I'm fine with good of the order, because that kind of feels, I don't know, it feels more like of the whole.
Okay,
Does that make sense? Or close?
thank you. Anything else on either sections A or B? Anything else on
No,
A or B?
on
Oh,
side.
thank you. Okay, Commissioner Herron.
If you were to eliminate a public comment, I would like, or one of them, based on the information that in the 6:30 start of our meeting, normally we won't get too many, maybe for the public coming in. Perhaps the 6:30 would be a good time for them to come in. Also, they could better comments if they hear what we have. And so they could, because at the beginning, they may, you know, first of all, we don't have too many of them coming in that early. And of course, if it's towards towards the end, they'll have more time to listen to our deliberate or discussion.
So your
And they'll
suggestion,
have time to make a better comment.
okay, so your suggestion is public comment
Should
should
be at the end.
at the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
Got it, okay, we've recorded that, thank you. Other thoughts about this section?
No, good, for the good of the order, I believe that's appropriate.
Okay. Anything there under the subsection B on special meetings? Anything else, Commissioner?
I don't have any other comments to add.
Thank you. President Norris?
My question was, how do we define good order, good of the order? I'm not sure what that
I
meant.
think it's a cliche, you know.
Term of art of some kind, isn't it, Skip?
Yeah, that's correct. It's just a term of art. It allows a commissioner to speak freely, basically a comment. They can identify something that's coming up or some personal reflection they
So
had
at
on
the
something.
end of the meeting, you would have this time where.
Good of the order, any commissioner that
Okay.
has any comment that would be good of the order, and that's why I think we actually put /
Comment, it does say
Comment.
commissioner comment.
So-
So how long do we get to speak?
There is no time limit. The president then would, you know, again, have the courtesy of allowing someone to speak, but you're not gonna make decisions, you're not gonna vote. So I'll just bring to your attention, if you have a committee of the whole, that's completely different. Maybe Commissioner Pollard knows this, but according to the city of Snoqualmie, their committee of the whole is used for informal consideration of an issue, removes the normal limitations on the number of times members can speak and debate. Regular presiding officer remains in the chair. Results of the votes taken during informal consideration are decisions of the assembly, which are not voted on again. So the committee of the whole is another distinct, different process than just making a comment. And so what I'll do is I'll provide to the other board members some of the samples we looked at, including the rules of procedure for the city of Snoqualmie.
Yeah,
We
and
like-
I
we
had
like
committee of a
those.
whole in parentheses.
Yeah, I'll give you some more information on the committee of the whole, but that is another opportunity to vote and do away with, you're basically suspending opportunities for how much discussion occurs. It could go on and on and on. Yeah, so I'll give you some more information about that. And further, city of Snoqualmie doesn't have bylaws. You understand?
Yep.
So they only have rules of procedure. So most of these organizations, when Commissioner Pollard's wanting to match up bylaws and rules of procedure, bylaws don't exist. When I called their attorney, I said, well, what do you do for bylaws? He goes, what are you talking about? We don't have any bylaws.
They have a municipal code.
They have a code, they have an ordinance that they must comply by statute under the RCWs. Those are RCWs.
Right.
But they
I
don't,
realize that.
yeah, they
So
don't have bylaws.
when I'm making comparisons, I think maybe we ought to look at other hospital districts.
I am.
Use the city of
Yeah,
Snoqualmie because
yeah,
it's so
we-
convenient.
We'll get you some of those too. We've got at City of Chelan Community Hospital, we'll get some others.
I must say, when we first started, we did a lot of research, so I got the city of Snoqualmie, and I did ask for a bylaws, and what they have, no, we have rules and procedure, so that's what we are on. And I did Lake Chelan, and our legal counsel contacted California and Shoreline as well.
And we got
So there are
Shoreline, we
4.
got
We have
Oakland.
Oakland, so yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna move us along.
Thank
We're
you.
still,
Thank you.
we're still under
Thank you,
section one
CEO.
point 5 and soliciting feedback from President Norris.
Other than that, I just had those questions. How do we define good order? How long can we speak is one of them, which we did just address a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on now to section.
Question, I comment on this. You know, it really would be useful when we have next meeting dates and times. Can we have a proposed agenda for the next month? Or major topics or something of that sort as part of the final, winding up of any meeting we could talk about?
So-
I guess I feel uncomfortable about agendas come as a total surprise.
We have a suggestion here then for potential agenda items to be included under next meeting dates and times.
Yes, and maybe for this good of the order business, one of the things we could talk about is agenda for next month. I would think that'd be very constructive, because it's not fun to receive an agenda a few days before the meeting and have it be a total surprise as to what we're going to be doing.
You know,
I'm sorry, we're not debating.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we're just getting feedback, so we've got
Okay.
that feedback, and we're good, and that'll come back to the bylaws committee.
You read my mind.
Okay, thank you for that additional item under section 1.5. We're gonna move on now to section 1.6.
At some point, and maybe here, and maybe in the bylaws, we need to clarify as to whether we should be able to respond to a member of the public who makes a comment that is insulting, off the wall. I don't see here that we're even mentioning our rules of decorum that are on the back of our agenda. Maybe that should be in the
That's
standing rules or in the bylaws and standing rules. I'm not sure.
good additional comment there. Thank you very much.
I'll
We'll,
try to be quiet now.
No,
I've
that's
spoken enough tonight.
I'm glad, I know I should, I'm trying to not be opinionated here, but thank you for pulling out that language that we put on the back of our agendas. That's good.
Mr. Superintendent, at one point, you said that we need to put in the bylaws or some official document that commissioners are not employees of the district. Do you remember that discussion? We were told by a member of the staff that commissioners are employees of the district. Now, while that is true from an IRS standpoint, because we get payments,
Right, yeah.
we are under state law prohibited from being employees of the district, under state law.
Yeah. Let us.
And you, at that time.
No,
It's
Sorry.
the question of employee or not employee.
Okay, got it. I got that.
And at one point,
Research that.
it's been months now, you said we need to put that in the
We need
bylaws.
to
You
reflect
told me that.
Yeah, thank you.
So unless you reconsidered that,
No, I
I
just-
wanted to remind you of that.
Thank you for reminding me. Okay, very good. All right, on to section 1.6, and Joan, you're our lead commissioner on that one. Any thoughts on seating of commissioners?
I
It's all the language here.
just think it sounds fine to me.
Great, thank you very much.
Unless,
Oh, you got it unless.
unless the senior member is also the president, or
Well, so just to clarify, the way that's written, you have your 3 officers, and then the 2 remaining, you're
Okay.
applying, who is the senior of the 2 remaining? So that's how that works.
Thank you.
Okay, of course.
I
Of course.
needed that clarification because it didn't make sense.
No problem. Okay. Commissioner Herron, any thoughts on this?
No further comments.
Okay, thank you. President Norris?
No, I think this is perfect.
Okay, and Commissioner Pollard?
I think it does no harm, but very frankly, I think it's not necessary.
Very good, we got that. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on to section 1.7, and Commissioner Herron. You're our lead.
Don't see any needed things to be changed.
Okay, thank you very much. President Norris?
It seems appropriate.
Very good. Commissioner Pollard?
I see nothing here about the Pledge of Allegiance, or
Well, that was at the beginning.
did we pass that up somewhere?
I think that's
It's
in
under
the
roll call.
suggested,
Oh,
it's under
yes, it's under
regular meeting.
1.5.
Flags, okay,
Oh,
flag
flags.
salute, is that the same as Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
It is.
All right, okay, that's taken care of then.
Yes.
But you see, we have 1.7 is roll call, and we also have roll call under 1.5. I don't know, that's a duplication, and
It's-
you don't wanna have you don't wanna have something separate about the flag salute, but it is already there. So, you see what I'm saying?
I do, and we'll take that into committee, and we may put For example, we could put under order of business where it says roll call, we could say parenthetically, see section 1.7 for, or for more detail.
Or just roll call and flag salute on one
Okay.
line.
But isn't
We-
1.7 is more for definition,
Correct.
clarification?
That's what I'm saying.
That's
Under
really
one-
what
Under
it
one
is.
five, we could say then parenthetically, see section 1.7
Right.
for further detail.
Yeah. We have it red line, because I know if I was someone would ask, please define roll call.
Brand new. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Pollard. Commissioner Young?
I agree with what you said.
Oh, great, okay, very good. That concludes the changes and the additions, and I'll now just stop talking.
May I've commented on this many times, but I think especially since this is gonna be read by the public and the media and so forth, I don't know how the listing of the commissioners corresponds to this business of seating of the commissioners, but I think generally speaking, after the officers of the board, the remaining commissioners should be listed in alphabetical order.
That's, we'll take that into committee, thank you for that.
And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, so why not be
We actually
consistent?
always do now.
Okay, well, see, here, we didn't.
That's because this was proposed to be comporting with the new language, if I remember correctly. Because the new language is not about alphabetical.
No.
Now, you're talking about the seating, though.
You don't have any language in your current bylaws on the seating of the commissioners. And one of the board members suggested we should have some definition as to how commissioners should be seated and how the roll call would be taken. Therefore, these two proposed amendments to the rules of procedure have been suggested.
Well, you're combining two things, seating
I understand.
and
Are we back
how
on?
the roll call.
We
would
have
be
not
called.
concluded
Well,
this, sorry.
But if you look at any public hospital they're listed alphabetically. You know,
Okay,
not by seniority.
Okay, we've got that feedback, thank you. Okay, then, now I am done asking for feedback on behalf of the committee. And I'll just say it's really been a joy to work on this committee.
And
Everybody's
you're gonna continue working on this.
everybody's pulling hard on it. Thank you, President.
You're welcome. Next on the agenda is other. Do we have anybody that has an other?
I do.
Oh,
Okay.
I thought you were done talking.
No, I'm not.
Under
I just
other.
want to let everybody know that President Norris had expressed some interest in attending the Becker's Conference coming up, and I would just open that up to others who may want to attend the Becker's Conference.
In Chicago? is
Yeah,
it?
I had
It's in-
one
it's
that
in-
I was, but I
it's
had.
in Chicago, it's the CEO, COO, but it is also, it's the one I go to every year. And it's strategic in nature, and so you can go right onto the Becker's website and look at the agenda for that CEO, COO conference.
Mhm,
Val, the
yeah.
dates are in,
November 11th,
thank you.
November
Okay, so-
11th,
So if you're
yeah.
interested, let us know, and we'll help you with that. That's all I
Yeah,
have.
yeah, I'd like to go because I missed the last,
Okay, I don't want to take up more of the meeting, but.
Well, are you asking for feedback on that?
No, I'm not asking for feedback at all. I'm just saying, if you are interested, go and contact Val.
Well, I'd like to make a comment. I think we need to really engage ourselves with austerity, and that means not going to conferences where it is not necessary, especially when we have you going and you can bring back a report. This would be very expensive, and I think we don't have the money to waste.
Thank you, Commissioner Pollard.
Don't have anything else?
Is there any other than what we've already heard? Public comment? I don't see any public, so I'm gonna assume that there's no public comment. Upcoming board meetings, regular board business meeting will be Thursday, October 11th, 2018, 6:30 in the Snoqualmie Valley Hospital. Work study will be Wednesday, October 24th, 2018, 6 p.m. in Snoqualmie Valley Hospital. And we also have other committees coming up. I know that we have finance committee coming up. So, and I didn't bring my calendar. Yes, I do have a calendar.
I believe it's October 9th.
Yeah, I think so. October 9th is Finance Committee, and Medical Committee is the 2nd.
October 9th, finance?
Finance,
Because right here it says October 30th.
top here,
Oh, I must have an old one.
October 2018 is, oh,
There are 2 meetings in October.
Yes,
October is
one-
actually rescheduled. It would have been in September, but it was rescheduled.
see, look, it's here and there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Well, I was looking at the, no, this is the medical committee, that's not the finance.
Finance is right
This
in
might
the
be
night.
useful.
Oh, you don't have it on yours?
No.
I was referring to that article.
Oh, you don't see it's right here. She does not have it on
Then her
hers.
version is the one that was printed previous to the one you have, and
Okay.
it was rescheduled after that version.
So you'll just get the calendar.
No, she would already have it. The one you're looking at is the one that was given out at the last board meeting.
And this is what it was in my packet.
Mhm.
I think, this I'm looking for it. I want it.
What
Because
months,
these are all-
what months are there?
This is September, October.
You have August, September, and October?
No, I threw away this August because it was old, so this was the,
Well, it was rescheduled
Oh, okay.
after that version that you have.
okay.
Okay.
Because these are all from last month's board packet. Okay.
Okay, so upcoming board meetings, I'll just review these. Regular business
Oh, no,
meeting
that's
is
not
Thursday,
the-
October 11th, 2018, 6:30, Snoqualmie Valley Hospital, and our work
Yeah.
study will be Wednesday, October 24th
Yeah.
at 6 PM here. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I hear a motion. I hear a motion. I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you.